Welcome to this urgent security explainer. I'm initiating a Code Ninja security advisory right now for a critical Apple vulnerability tracked as CVE 2026-43659. Look, as network defenders, we don't have time for fluff, so we're jumping straight into the intel. If you're managing Apple devices on your network, you've got to understand the mechanics of this threat right this second to lock down your perimeter.
So the core threat from this recent disclosure really boils down to a severe timing flaw. What this actually means on the ground is that a malicious locally installed app can exploit the precise timing of system operations to completely sidestep operating system isolation. Basically, it wins the race. And when it wins, it can siphon off your protected, sensitive user data. It's a fundamental breakdown of the process boundaries we literally rely on for baseline device security. Phase 1, the zero-day disclosure for CVE 2026-43659. Our objective here is super straightforward. We are getting you the exact intelligence needed to force an immediate vendor patch. All right, here's the rapid-fire sequence of events as they hit the wire. On May 11th, Apple and the National Vulnerability Database officially published the CVE. Just one day later, on May 12th, CISA ADP analyzed and scored it. Then on May 18th, the researchers over at SentinelOne released a forensic technical deep dive breaking down the mechanics. This super tight timeline really goes to show just how fast threat intelligence moves, and exactly why your response times have to be just as aggressive. Phase 2, secure the comms check, the early CTA protocol. In our line of work, real-time intelligence isn't just nice to have, it's a strict security necessity. So go ahead and execute these steps right now so you don't miss the next advisory. Subscribe to CyberTech79, enable your notifications so you get the intel the absolute second it drops, and hit that like button as a formal ACK, an acknowledgement of receipt for this intelligence. Okay, comms link secured, let's move on. Phase 3, assessing the blast radius, threat mechanics, and scope. On paper, this vulnerability officially holds a CVSS version 3.1 base score of 4.7, which technically categorizes it as a medium severity. But as defenders on the front lines, we know we can't just blindly trust a base score. The context behind that number is what's really interesting. While it doesn't give an attacker remote code execution, this timing flaw has a critical high-level impact on data confidentiality. If an adversary slips in, your isolated data is totally exposed. To truly get how the mechanics of this attack work, we have to look at the weakness enumeration, which is CWE 362. This is a classic time of check to time of use flaw, or TOCTU. Think of it kind of like a security guard checking an ID at a door, but looking away for just a split second before unlocking it. In that tiny microsecond window between the system's security validation and the actual execution of the resource, an attacker swaps in a malicious resource. It's an improper synchronization of shared resources, and man, it is highly effective. So what does an adversary actually need to pull this off? Well, the attack complexity is formally rated as high, primarily because it requires extreme timing precision to reliably hit that race condition window. But please, do not let that give you a false sense of security. The attacker only needs local access, meaning they just need to get an app onto the device, and low privileges to execute the concurrent operations. Once that malicious app is running, no further user interaction is needed. It just does its thing. And this right here brilliantly illustrates the scope of our problem. This is the blast radius. If your managed devices are running any of these listed iOS, iPadOS, macOS, or visionOS builds prior to the patched version shown, your perimeter is currently exposed. We're talking about older branches like macOS Sonoma before 14.8.7, all the way up to Tahoe and iOS branches before 26.5. Seriously, take a screenshot of this matrix and cross-reference it against your fleet inventory immediately. Phase 3 continued. Immediate patch protocol, actionable defenses. The good news is Apple has successfully addressed the improper synchronization issue. How did they do it? By adding critical validation checks in these specific, updated OS versions. The new logic essentially ensures that the condition observed during the initial security check stays exactly the same at the precise time of use. Patching to these specific builds is the only vendor-supported remediation. There are absolutely no magic workarounds here, guys. As sysadmins and network defenders, these are your mandatory tactical actions. First, push the OS updates across your entire fleet. Second, and this is absolutely crucial, enforce strict mobile device management policies to block network access or enrollment for any non-compliant devices sitting below the patch baseline.
And third, completely restrict sideloaded or untrusted apps from developer distribution channels. Apply the principle of least privilege. If they can't install the malicious app in the first place, they can't exploit the local vulnerability. Period.
We also really need to talk about detection. Currently, there are no known exploits in the wild, and no vendor-published indicators of compromise even exist yet. But you cannot afford to fly blind. You have to actively monitor your endpoint telemetry. Start reviewing your apps for high-frequency, entitlement-gated API calls. Most importantly, forward your macOS endpoint security and unified log events to your centralized SIEM so you can spot those abnormal concurrency patterns that tell you someone is trying to win this race condition on your hardware.
Phase 4, the code and ethics. Coordinated vulnerability disclosure. This is the code we live by. Users must know the risks to actively defend their systems. Security through obscurity is a completely failed operational model. I practice coordinated vulnerability disclosure because you, the dedicated defenders on the front lines, absolutely must know these granular risks to effectively protect your networks. We force fixes and we protect the perimeter together. As we wrap up this intelligence briefing, I want to leave you with a final, critical thought to evaluate your own infrastructure. Are your MDM policies strict enough, and is your zero-trust architecture robust enough to isolate the next inevitable zero-day before a patch even exists? Think about it. If an attacker tries to exploit a flaw tomorrow that we don't even know about today, will your current application restrictions actually stop them?
That is the standard we have to strive for. Review your telemetry, enforce your updates, protect the perimeter, and stay secure.